Carole Robinson. Welcome to this edition of County Happenings, where we find out what's happening going all around the county with the county mayor, Roger Sanderson.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It is, of course, this show's been taped, but it's rodeo time.
It's rodeo time. The kids are rearing and the folks are rearing. We had a nice parade, and now we're ready to buck some horses and do some bulls.
Yeah, it's always interesting at the fair, at the Ag Center, and I know a lot of people attended, but a lot didn't, and it's just amazing to me how the rodeo, this was the 69th year,
Yeah.
and you go back, and of course my thoughts always go back to those early people, Dr. Guffey, Mr. Moody, several other men that got the rodeo started, and then of course it kind of made its way over to the Rotary Club, and that's the #1 fundraiser for them. Several thousands of dollars are given out to scholarships.
And it's
because
had
of that.
several homes, the rodeo had.
It has.
So
For the last 15 years, it's been out at the Ag Center.
Oh, it doesn't seem possible. It's been 15
Well,
years.
speaking of the Ag Center, I might as well share with you, I just got word that the sewer is now at the Ag Center.
Oh,
So that's a big thing.
yeah, no more septic system.
So,
With all those people, I don't know how in the world well, you pumped a lot, I know.
yeah, we did. It's not a topic we want to show at
No.
supper time, but or talk about, but it's taken us 15 years for the sewer to eventually get out to the
Yeah,
Ag
and
Center.
the whole mock-up now of the landscape around the Ag Center has changed a lot.
Oh,
People are going to
absolutely.
be really surprised this year when they come to the fair.
Well, you've got major businesses out there that just 15 years ago for sure, but 10 years ago,
You were using them for parking lots.
that's right. We were using them for parking lots. Now you got some major corporations that have moved in out there, and of course the city is working very diligently to get that area developed with the network of roads, and of course sewer. Now it will really explode.
And the rerouting of Long Lane and.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, that was finished last year, but it's still, every time I go over there, I just go,
Well, and Berry Farms has been, it's
Oh, yeah.
a mini Cool Springs Mall is what it is.
that's exactly.
3 sides of that interstate. And of course, I don't remember how long it's been now. We had the devastating fire that burned the bridge. I think it was 5 years ago.
Yeah. 5 or 6, yeah.
That bridge literally disintegrated.
Right.
And then they had to put it back in about 75 days. And so the folks on the eastern side of I-65 were cut off, and the folks on the west side were cut off. I mean, everything had to go up through Highway 96 or go all the way down into Bird County.
Unless you knew the shortcuts.
Unless you knew that. But sooner or later, you had to go across 65.
Yes.
And it literally taught all of us on the government side, particularly the city, that
How landlocked some places were.
that's right. And when something like this, as catastrophic as it was, and there was a loss of life and lots of property loss, lots of dollars, insurance dollars, but it also taught us the folks on 65 East and the folks on 65 West, without that bridge, it was a very difficult chore going to the grocery store, just going to school, all the little conveniences. Just this morning I heard the electricity. Now my son lives nearby there, but the electricity went off in West Haven at 7, he told me, whatever time, 7:02.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so he said they've been having a little breaker problem. They've had an electrician come out there, and he said he just thought it was his breaker and went out to, the electrician fixed it and said, this should take care of it. And he went out and said, the switch hadn't tripped. And then he said he went outside and heard the neighbors talking about, what are we going to do? How do we get the garage door open? Those basic things that you just, you take for granted, and how we've come to depend so heavily on electricity. Well, we found that out when that bridge was gone. And so out of that, though, came in a lot of good things. The city and the county work together. We've got a temporary fire station. A new permanent fire station will be built here over the next few months that also opened up the road of Long Lane going over.
Right.
Over the interstate. Now, it won't have an entrance and exit, but you'll be able to communicate at some future point just from Long Lane back and forth the interstate, which is another point other than the Paydensville Road Bridge there. It's, sometimes bad things have to happen before you realize.
Yeah, before you get it knocked into your head.
It's kind of like the electricity going off. My son he called me and he said, do you know? And I said, I don't have a clue. I saw mine flicker when I was shaving, and the television just kind of went off, and the lights flickered, but it came right back on because they got redundancy of power, where Middle Tennessee Electric's done a wonderful job of giving this area redundancy so that one substation or whatever happens, you can pick it up from the other side, which is what you want in the cities and the counties. But I had no clue. And he said, Dad, I heard one man and him and his wife said, well, I think you just pull that cord. And he could hear them inside try to get to the garage door because they'd never experienced it. And then I'm thinking about all the kids who are trying to get ready, the girls with the hair dryers and the hot water running out.
I can't go to school today.
I can't go to school today. Well, that just reminded me when I was a boy, because where I lived in a rural area, if a bird or a crow hit the lines too hard, it went out.
Yeah, I remember ours
Or
used to
the
be out.
well pump. I mean, when the electricity went off,
You couldn't get water.
you couldn't get water come
Yeah.
up. And so you had a little storage, but it wasn't much. I don't know, 35 to 50 gallons. And
We're still that way, and I mean, for years, our electricity would go out at least once a week. And I always knew when a big storm was brewing to fill 2 bathtubs,
yeah,
because you don't know when you're gonna have water again.
yeah. But my son was talking this morning. The kids still operate the refrigerator door, getting their milk
Yeah.
and orange juice to pour over their cereal. And he said, it's one time,
Yeah.
kids.
What do you want?
What do you want? We'll get it all done. But that's a new way of thinking, because they don't think like that. They haven't had to think that way.
The things that we just kind of get used to.
Well, electricity, I often hear people, and I think I've been guilty of saying it, about the good old days, but there were some things in the good old days that weren't very good. I love air conditioning. I love it. And I also like warm days where your feet hits that hardwood floor in the wintertime. I like that.
Yeah.
And in the old days, it was the fireplace.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
we
Or
had
wood stove,
wood stove or radiant heat.
Yeah.
But the house never felt good and warm.
No, well, and they weren't insulated as well as they
No.
are today either.
No.
Where when it got warm, it stayed warm when the heat cut out for a few
Mom
minutes.
had that, I should be talking about this on our show here, but Mom had that kettle that sat on the stove, and she'd turn the ive on, not the stove top, but the ive on the stove, and it'd warm that up, and that old kettle, when it'd start whistling, you knew it was time to get some good hot coffee or oatmeal or something, and Mom would let us kids have a little bit of coffee, just a little. Says you get addicted to that and it's bad for you. Whatever
Such-
mother
such a
said, that's
growth.
it. There wasn't no democracy at my house. Well, speaking of democracy, we just went through a process called budgets
Budgets,
again.
yes. And no tax increase. Davidson
rate was-
County is thinking 50 cents on the 100.
I don't have anything to do with
No,
Davidson County.
And Williamson County is no tax increase.
Well, our tax rate for the unincorporated part of the county is $2.15. It's also for the city, but they take off and add on because some of the services they add. But we always speak of the county tax rate, and it was $2.15 last year, and it'll be $2.15 this year.
How do you manage that? Growth doesn't pay for itself. That's been established a long time ago. How do you do it?
Carole, I wish I had, if I could answer that point blank or just in a couple of page brochure, I would probably quit being mayor and just travel the circuit.
Saying, this is how we do it.
This is how we do it. You are correct. And for the, believe it or not, almost 32 years that I've been involved in public service, either as a county commissioner or as mayor, every year it's something a little bit different. But the way that Middle Tennessee, and particularly Williamson County, has been growing for the last 15 to 20 years, first of all, it's phenomenal to me that many people throughout the United States have found this little county.
Yeah. It's not like it's in a prominent place. I mean, we are in the middle of the country, but
It's a result of good schools, and those were things that were planned. I think too many times, and I'm guilty of it too, that the good things that happen, you just think, well, they just happen. Kind of about electricity.
Yeah.
You know, Middle Tennessee Electric would jump in here and say, it's because we planned.
Right.
What to do. We looked at the future. We did, and it's expensive to run those electrical lines. It's expensive for a community to grow. And
but
our
there were
tax rate,
visionaries way back when.
when we were planning that we wanted better schools, and
Right.
we fought, nobody ever fought not having better schools. It was, how are you going to find the money for that?
Yeah.
How are you going to fund that? And yes, we're $500 million plus in debt, but we have a higher tax base. The tax base here in Williamson County is about $150,000-$160,000. We're in Rutherford County, another growing. Their tax base is about $89,000 worth of. But you've got, I mean, the bond rating agencies look at us and say, well, you've got the taxable base to support borrowing this money. The way you make that real simple and equal is that a person making $50,000 and a person making $150,000 can do more at 150 than they can at that 50. That's pretty simple. The more you make, the more you can support. You just don't want to be sure that you go over
Right.
what your limit will be. And you and I have always used that litmus test of the house that the banks have used for you. It can't be more than 25 to 30% of your income. It just can't.
Right.
They won't let you do it. And that litmus test is given to us. I think fees, some people will say, well, fees are taxes. Okay, then there'll be taxes. But fees are needed in your community for new people moving in. And we've done that over the years. You've been reporting on it for a long time. We've got adequate school, privileged staff. We've got all these terms we call it, and they had to fit it within the law. But basically what we say, if you move into our community, we're not going to strap all of this growth that you bring and put it on the existing taxpayers. We're going to say the new people, you have to pay.
Yeah, you got to help us out.
You got to help us out. You can't just move in and take advantage of that.
Of everything that we've worked towards for all these years.
And it's fair. Now, we've got one litigation going on right now that's called the educational impact fee that is being tested. It's a new thing we found a year and a half ago, and I feel confident and comfortable that that'll all be worked out, but it's a period of time we're having to wait. So it's not just one item. It's a combination. It's a combination of being able to have, and schools consume about 70% of your budget. Let's just 2/3 of your budget.
But schools aren't the only thing growing.
That's
I mean,
correct.
As growth, all the services need to grow too.
Well, we for the last year, we've had a task force. I'm big on putting people in a room once a month, once every 6 weeks, on a particular issue and say, okay, let's fix it. Let's solve it ourselves. Now, we could hire a consultant.
Yeah.
But we, as whatever that problem
You've
is.
got smart people
we
here
got
to
smart
fix-
people,
yeah.
so let's figure it out. And so for the last year plus, we've been meeting with about 2 or 3 different disciplines within the judicial system, the judges, the juvenile courts, the juvenile services, the sheriff, and those services that we, as growth occurs in the community, you have more people going to court. You have more juvenile issues. You have more, you name it. Everything is a component based upon new growth.
Right.
And space is always an issue. And our jails are 30 years old this year. but some of the parts are wearing out. They're like me. They're getting older, and they just can't replace parts
Right.
sometimes.
And jails are not traditionally a place where people take care of things.
No. We don't have the best customers in
Right.
our jails. But you have to plan. So in the next 5 years, we know we're going to have to build another jail. We're picking up, the state legislators this year approved a new judge for the 21st judicial area. Now, that new judge, main priorities are the lower counties, the Hickman County, the Perry counties, the Murray counties, those judges. But what the 4 judges that we've got now, they take turns rotating. They're kind of the traveling judge.
It is, honestly, I go to some of these counties for events and stuff like that with my husband, and it's funny to see on the courthouse the list of judges and a familiar name in Hickman County, or let's say it's Hickman, Lewis, Perry, and Williamson County, and see the judges that are based here, their names on those courtroom doors.
Those circuit riders,
Right.
that's what they used to be called. There's enough business for them right here.
Right.
In Williamson County. As businesses come to town, individuals come to town, they have more and more need for hearing their cases, whatever they happen to be. But the legislators, which is the only place you can get a new judge, like state judge, that person will work the lower counties and stay away from Williamson County. Well, that'll free up a judge here that would normally travel there. So now then, we got to prepare another courtroom. We got to fix on some of the historical courthouse. Well, 10 years ago, we just spent $6 or $7 million on the courthouse, but it was more of a historical, not going to be a working courtroom. Well, we're using it every week now because of the caseload that we have. The bigger issue is in our juvenile court with Sharon Guffey, Judge Guffey. She is it. We have some helpers, but she's the judge of record. But it's all day long. They're lined up. There's kids and young people, and we have divorces, that we have issues with children, custody battles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and it's just exploding. We have to have a new judicial courtroom. Our alternative learning center, that we're the last one in the state that was allowed to have our juvenile population and our prison population in the same compound. So when we make changes to that, now we've got to plan a new place for the judicial side. Well, we recognize that during this year's budget. For years, Judge Guffey oversaw that, and there were school personnel there.
Right.
But now we've given that responsibility, not given, I think they call it volunteered it out. But the schools will be over the ALC for the first time ever, beginning on July 1.
Will that mean that, because the judge had certain authority.
Judge will still have
so-
authority on the bench, but the day-to-day oversight of that, because once a child they have to go to school. If you're under a certain age, you've got to go to school. And so you may not go home to go to school. You may stay in a juvenile center while you attend school, but you're required to teach those children. Because the last thing we need is stick them over in the jail. They get behind, they drop out of school, and then we got a bigger problem.
Right.
5, 10, 20 years down the road. So there's children, and many of those mature out while they're in those services, and when they're in those services, they have to be educated. And so starting July 1, the school system, Dr. Looney and the school board will be totally responsible for all of the education quality and components of the alternative learning center. That does not mean Judge Guffey is going to send any more or any less into that. It's that she will not have the oversight of the day-to-day operations
Does that
of school.
free up more time for her?
Should
or
free
more?
up some and her staff. but the population is just exploding down there, just like it is in our schools. So we've got to find a new way to handle that. We need a new facility. That's the thing I don't know that you and I have ever talked about on this show that's just, I won't say creeping, but it's there, and it's there every day, is the mental health issue. From our adult population, male, female, to our juvenile, male, female population. It is an area that we spend a lot of money on trying to find solutions. Basically, the state and the feds got out of it and just said, okay, y'all handle it down to the lower level. Well,
But you'd have no power.
they have no power, and they didn't send any money, or a little bit of money. And so a lot of the issues that are going on are, I've heard the sheriff say upwards of 70% are drug-related.
Right.
And 15 years ago, that wasn't the case.
It just
And
seems to be getting worse and worse.
And when we talk about these drugs and we talk about issues, they affect us mentally. There are drugs out there on the market that are so powerful that if you use them one time, you're addicted.
Right.
Now, that's hard for me to believe, but they work with the mind. I mean, that quick, you're addicted to something. And a lot of them are opioids. A lot of them are pain medicines. And I know several people and my friends that have had major back surgeries or some catastrophic thing in their life, and they've got hooked on those things. They've got hooked on those drugs, unbeknowing until they got ready to come off. And so to come off of that, oftentimes it's a
Process.
It's a process, and it's a nasty ride. Because I'm not proud of it, but because I still use a tobacco product, it's very addicting. And I understand addiction to that degree. One time I laid them down for 10 years.
Wow.
You don't quit. You just had the last one. And I can only imagine drugs that are so powerful you can't get off from them without additional medicine. So without spending a whole show on that, the budget processes this year are dealing with things that 20 and 25 years ago I didn't even think about. From our student resource officers, you and I have been doing these shows for a long time. 10 years ago, we didn't even know what student resource officers were in this area. And now they're in every school and two in most. And the cost of the manpower and the womanpower of that, the cost of the equipment, the vehicles, the extra security measures in all of our schools and the precautions, it's a way of life. You and I didn't grow up that way. Guys had their shotgun and rifle in the back of their pickup, and they drove to school.
And every kid in the rural schools had a knife in their pocket,
Every kid.
a little pocket knife.
Not today. And those are things that we have to be prepared for, we have to plan for, and budget for. Those are the side effects, if you can use the word, of a society that has, in some ways, lost its way. That suicidal rates they're up. You report on them. I know they're there. They're not the warm and fuzzy and good feeling things that we know that happens, but the reality is that it is happening. And so all of those dollars, they have to be directed to help that process. When I would hate to say how many millions of dollars a year we pour into security, either from Jeff's area, the law enforcement side, or Dr. Looney's side over the school side, that has to occur now. It just has to occur because
I've interviewed just recently for our special section, recognizing public safety, several officers who talked about having to administer Narcan.
Yes, Narcan.
3 years ago, who heard of Narcan? Now we're funding it so that training for officers to know how to, when and where to administer, and they carry it on them.
It's not the good part of this show we like to talk about, but I think people have to understand that's part of the budgetary processes.
Right, and yeah,
And
that's,
I'm perfectly fine discussing in an open forum like this, but that's hard to talk about in a public forum, trying to figure out which is more important. Educating the children, well, educating the children is providing safe, secure places for them to live and work at, and for our teachers, and giving them, that costs money.
right. And in the meantime, you've got children that have issues that need to be dealt with. You can't just sit down a kid and educate them. We have to support those kids so that their brains are ready to receive what the teachers are trying to teach them.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a challenge, but I think the community should realize that there's men and women working every day to meet those challenges that are out there and those are going to be increased costs. And I realize you and I get very upset we don't see more people at the polls voting. I don't know that we'll ever see the days
I never get that.
at the local level. And I'm not going to stand here and belittle anyone for not, because there are reasons that you can't. But rest assured, the people that work in our community in that public service area, where there are ambulance drivers, first responders, paramedics, the law enforcement community, our teachers, our wonderful employees that we have in the county and our cities, there's a lot of good in those men and women in programs trying to come out. And oftentimes during the campaign trail, a lot of things are said, a lot of things are pointed at, that there's another side to the story. My
Right.
mother always, when we got in trouble, says, all right, there's two sides of the story. We'll start with you first, Rogers, young man. When she said young man, you knew you were in trouble.
Yeah.
Or she would look to my sister and say, we'll start with you, young lady. And she was going to get both sides out, and then she'd make that decision. And we've got a very, very smart electoral body, and I'm thankful that we live here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like everything's like in our homes, we've got expenses now that we never had with cell phones and internet and cable TV and all these things. It's hard to make, our budgets change at home and our budgets change.
Well, our budget is changing. This year, the school's budget the total budget will be somewhere around $560 to $570 million. And over $500 million. The second year in a row that I remember it's over $500 million. So it's not going the other way. We're going to open 2 or 3 new schools this year. We've got another one opening up the first part of 2019. And then there's about another $350 to $400 million worth of school buildings coming online in the next 10 years.
Wow. That's a lot of budgets and a lot of things to consider. And we hope you consider coming back to see us again next time on County Happenings. Have a good one.
All of us want to make a difference. As veterans, we committed to protect our country. We served and sacrificed for the things that mattered most. Those experiences shaped our lives. Now we're husbands, wives, parents, and friends. And sometimes we forget that the biggest challenge can be asking for support. The Veterans Crisis Line is here for veterans. Dial 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. It matters.